Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, the breakaway seven, the gang of seven, yesterday who left the Labour Party continue in their own way to dominate all debate in this country today. Speculation that there are many more Labour MPs that will want to join them. Speculation that many moderate Labour MPs could well be deselected by local branches that have now been taken over by the Momentum group. And earlier on this morning, Jeremy Corbyn was speaking at a manufacturing conference in London, saying that he regrets their decision to resign over bullying and anti-Semitism claims, and he insists that he's willing to listen.
Anyone who thinks they're not being consulted is not taking up, in my view, the opportunities that are available there and open and ready for them at all times to do that. I'm always prepared to discuss policies with people in the party, and I do all the time.
OK, that's maybe what Jeremy Corbyn says, but there is actually some further bad news, some bad evidence that is out this evening. Sky data polls released under an hour ago show a couple of things that I think for the Labour Party are potentially quite disturbing. Firstly, on Jeremy Corbyn himself, 35% in this poll think that Jeremy Corbyn is personally anti-Semitic, whilst 24% do not, the others don't know. And when it comes to the Labour Party, 34%, I guess the same people, think the Labour Party is institutionally anti-Semitic, whilst 23% do not. But perhaps even more surprising is another poll by Sky Data, suggesting that if there were a general election tomorrow, and look, this is a snapshot, and take it at that, but if there were a general election tomorrow, that 32% would vote for the Conservatives, 9% would vote for the Liberal Democrats, 10% would vote for the independent group, even though they're not yet a registered political party, and that 26%, only 26%, would vote Labour. Now, bear in mind, in June last year, the Labour Party were on 40%. That was a YouGov poll out in one of the Sunday newspapers, with the Conservatives a couple of points ahead. They were up in the 40s, a very, very good number. I guess the sort of Corbyn wave that started with a general election campaign back in May and June in 2017 was still strong. Over the course of the autumn, slowly but surely, we've seen Labour's numbers begin to fall, and overnight we've now seen them back down to the mid-20s, pretty disastrous territory. So I want to ask you, what do Labour do? What do they need to do to regain your trust? And if you think maybe it's simply a clearer stance on Brexit that would help form your decision, then call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think they simply have got to come clean about the extent of anti-Semitism within their party, in which case text to 84850. Or does it come down to the real need that actually the Labour Party needs a different leader? He did have his moment in the sun in that run-up to the general election, and of course Glastonbury. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn just afterwards. But actually, is he now really the problem? If that's how you feel, please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course Facebook, as you can watch us live and comment there too. What do the Labour Party need to do to regain your trust? Or is it all looking a bit late? I can remember a completely unelectable Labour Party back in the early 1980s and a huge campaign to get Militant out of the party, fought by Neil Kinnock. And Kinnock, perhaps, in terms of history, will get great credit for making Labour once again electable. I've never been a great Kinnock fan, but I have to give him credit for that. Isn't it funny that the day after these 7 moderate Social Democratic wing Labour MPs leave, guess who rejoined the Labour Party this morning? Derek Hatton, Degsy, he, the leader of Militant in Liverpool, the guy that stood up and harangued Kinnock in that famous mid-1980s party conference. Well, Degsy is back in the Labour Party. The left are back in control of the Labour Party. Hardline socialists, Marxists, call it what you will, they're in charge. Is maybe that part of the problem? Because, you see, I think there just isn't an appetite in this country for hard left socialism. And you can make any argument you want to me about what Attlee did in 1945, but we've just been through 2 world wars, and people actually wanted an extended welfare state. It was a very, very different time. I don't think hardline socialism has got a chance of forming a majority government in this country. And to me, that is actually at the heart of the problem. I think they need a more moderate leader. But look, you tell me whether I'm right. Tell me whether I'm wrong. James is calling from Barnes. James, what do Labour need to do to regain your trust?
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
I think that Jeremy Corbyn, Nigel, is toxic, quite frankly, and I think it's an indictment, isn't it, on the Labour Party, that the only two people that I can see that have come out in support of Jeremy Corbyn in the last 24 hours are two of the most discredited Labour politicians of the last 10 years, Mr. Livingston and Derek Hatton. I mean, does that not really say it all, Nigel, really? And the fact that he is obviously happy to roll these people, these two out, I think that the only way to save the Labour Party is that if there was Tom Watson and Yvette Cooper, they would be electable. And Tom Watson already, I read in the Times, I think it was yesterday, he's already warning that we need to do something. So he's already positioning himself. And I think he is the only chance they've got with Yvette Cooper, personally, Nigel. OK,
now, if they did go, James, for an Yvette Cooper type figure, she is, and I can understand why you would say that. There's one slight problem I would put to you, which is that she is viscerally opposed to Brexit. And there are 5 million Labour voters out there who believe in Brexit.
True. I mean, I can't even speak. I'm a Remainer, and I get that. I do get that. But I think at least she is a person of conviction, like yourself. You put your cards on the table, and although I don't agree with you, but I admire your conviction, and you don't change your point of view. Whereas Corbyn, although we know that he's a Eurosceptic, that he doesn't, everything that he's done is just as bad as Theresa May, because it's all about what's good for him and the Labour Party.
Okay, so if Corbyn went, James. OK, Corbyn went and Yvette Cooper took over, but you would still have in that party that you clearly care about so much, you would still have a lot of branches now dominated by momentum.
She would do, but then, the same thing as the Conservative Party have Mr. Rees-Mogg and his band of merry men. I mean, I think Tom Watson really is the man to lead the Labour Party. No question about it.
OK. No, James, really interesting. Thank you. Mary from Holloway says to me, if Corbyn went, I would go back to Labour. Nigel, the Labour Party is doomed. The hard left will never let go now they have control. But the vast majority of Britons won't vote for an anti-Semitic party. Labour will be in the political desert for years to come, is the view of Chris in Ottershaw. Adam is a first-time caller from Newhaven in Sussex. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, Nigel. How
Welcome.
you doing?
Welcome. So 26%, Adam, I know it's a snap poll, but boy, it doesn't look very pretty for Labour, does it?
I think it's absolute rubbish. I think Jeremy Corbyn has done an amazing job, and all I hear every day in the papers and on the news and on the radio is trying to put him down. And it's because everyone's scared, because they know what will happen if Jeremy Corbyn gets in. Things will change, and things will change for the better. And we all know that. And it's just, and I think people aren't stupid. They can see what the newspapers are doing. They can see what the media is doing. Jeremy Corbyn isn't anti-Semitic. He knows what a lot of things that Israel's done to the world, and he just says it as it is. I used to live in Holloway. We lived on Holloway Road for a long time. And Jeremy Corbyn used to go to every meeting, every community meeting, and he would be there and he would talk to people. And when you speak to him, he's real. He doesn't mess about. He's not talking. He's actually listening to what people say. And I just find it's heartbreaking to hear Adam, a lot.
Adam, let me put this to you, right? When I was leader of UKIP 5 years ago, and we hit the lead in the polls for the European elections, we were ahead of the Labour and Tory parties with about 5 weeks to go. And I learned something, actually, that anything worse in life than being behind is being ahead. Because I had everybody attacking me, outside media sources attacking me. Do you know what it did, Adam, to people within UKIP? It actually made us more united. And I felt stronger as leader of the party in that situation than I felt at any other time during those years. And I'm going to put this to you, Adam, that you're quite right that Corbyn is under huge attack You know, I mean, the Mail on Sunday this week, whatever it may be, he's under huge attack. And yet, what's happening is many of his own senior, respected members are leaving the party. There is a different kind of problem here, isn't there?
Let them leave. Go. Goodbye. And the only reason they're leaving is because they know that Jeremy Corbyn's not going anywhere. And if they're stupid enough to think that they can take his position or become or change, I don't know what they're after, but just leave. I don't know what their game is. They know the real deal. They know that Jeremy Corbyn is for the people.
Well, but Adam, they are basically Social Democrats. They are that moderate wing of the Labour Party that Blair, of course, led so effectively. I mean, Adam, let me ask you: are you a Marxist?
I'm not. I'm just. You know, I don't want to label myself as anything. I label myself, and I label Jeremy Corbyn as real, down to earth. They know what's going on in the world, and maybe he has been a little bit, on the fence with Brexit. It's because he just wants, Conservatives to just blow themselves out the water. Let them do what they need to do. And maybe he does want, he does want to leave Europe. And the reason he would want to leave Europe is so that we can nationalise the railways. We can make this country better, not because we want to get rid of all the immigrants.
But Adam, doing nothing and hoping the other side mess up is not really leadership. Adam, you are convinced then that the Labour Party has not got an anti-Semitic problem, is that right?
Of course they haven't. He might speak up and say things that actually, that might hurt the Israelis in any way, or the Jews in any way. But it's, there's a lot of things that have happened
there are
in this
many,
world.
Adam.
And yes, he has spoken to Hezbollah, and yes, he has spoken to some terrorist organisations, and that's what we need to do. We need to communicate.
I have to say, Adam, that the disciplinary procedures within the Labour Party of those that have said outright, blatant anti-Semitic things has not been impressive. But Adam, you are a passionate Corbynista. On Twitter, I get Labour needs to come clean. Just come out and tell us whose side are you on, leave or stay. And this is very much a part of the problem too. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz. But it isn't just the Labour Party in terrible trouble, because a tweet that was put out last night by Telegraph journalist Stephen Swinford said this: the Prime Minister was told this afternoon, that's yesterday, she was warned by Amber Rudd, David Gauke, Greg Clark and David Mundell that she faces 22 ministerial resignations of members of the government if there is a no-deal Brexit. In a meeting in Number 10, they urged her to publicly commit to extending Article 50 in the event that her deal can't be reached. So I think we're going to talk a lot more over the next few weeks about this fragmentation of politics that I believe is occurring. Lots and lots of very strong opinions. I'm a Brexiteer, but I think someone like Yvette Cooper as leader would be good for Labour. At least people would know where she stood. And Brian from Wolverhampton says, if Tom Watson leaves, I will leave the party too, and I'm a lifelong member. The entire front bench needs to be replaced. And on my comment that they've fallen from 40% last June in the polls, Labour, to 26, well, I get challenged on this by Steve, who says, don't forget, the Tories were 40% in front, but they nearly lost. Well, Steve, they weren't 40% in front. They were 22, 23% in front, and Theresa May blew it. But the difference, Steve, is that when you're in an election campaign, it's highly volatile. All right? And you can go up and down very, very quickly, sometimes not even through your own fault. The difference here, I think, Steve, is his personal ratings have been steadily falling every single month since last June, and they're now lower than they've been at any point during his leadership. What I'm really saying to you, Steve, is there is a trend here, and reversing trends is not always an easy thing to do. Now, earlier on today, this afternoon, Eddie Mair spoke to the former Labour Home Secretary Jack Straw, and I think his comments are pretty damning. Jack Straw was asked about the 7 MPs who had left the party and why they'd done it.
I happen to have known Luciana Berger for a long time, people like Mike Gates for even longer. These are not people who are going to rush to conclusions about the Labour Party or anti-Semitism, but the filth that Luciana Berger has had to put up with is quite disgraceful. And I mean, I can't imagine it ever happening under any previous Labour leader. Not Ed Miliband, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, going right back to Clem Attlee. But if it had begun to happen, then we would have brought the hammers down on it straight away. because it's as revolting for people to be anti-Semitic as it is for them to be anti-black or anti-Asian or anti-Catholic. It's just horrible, but they haven't done so.
They haven't acted. That's really the point Jack Straw's making. When these problems surfaced, the Labour disciplinary machine hasn't acted. He also said he was shocked at how fanatics, as he calls them, have infiltrated the party.
Jewish people have played a major role inside the Labour Party and indeed inside the Communist Party and famously the Trotskyist Party as well. So it's just extraordinary that these fanatics have managed to manoeuvre themselves into a position where, in their myopic view, anti-Semitism is okay, and it's driving lots and lots of decent people away from Labour, not just people of the Jewish faith who are leaving in droves, but people who just dislike racism and know what it is.
Pretty bleak, but I thought even more damning was this, because he's not actually convinced that under Jeremy Corbyn that Labour would not be a threat to national security.
Mr Corbyn's difficulty in terms of convincing the British public and me about whether the country would be safe in his hands is his record in the past. This is about his support for terrorist groups. I mean, I've heard him speak up in support of the provisional IRA and come out with some extraordinary sort of special pleading on their behalf.
Well, he says he's a peacemaker. He's interested.
Yes, and you've got to, Hamas and Hezbollah, the Israeli government talk to Hamas and Hezbollah, but you've got to be careful about the terms in which you talk to these people. So that's one aspect. He's also been very keen in the past on us leaving NATO. So he's got a lot to prove in the meanwhile, and so has his Shadow Home Secretary, Diane Abbott, and his Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry.
Wow, there's half the front bench.
Well, it's not half, but these are very senior positions.
Who's still to prove to you that a Labour government wouldn't be a threat to national security?
Yes.
It's quite shocking, isn't it? I mean, a former Home Secretary is saying that if Corbyn became the Prime Minister, he could be a threat to national security. I can't think I've ever heard anything more damning said by a former senior member of a party about the current leader. I can't think of anything comparable to that. If you want to catch up on Jack Straw's comments, go to lbc.co.uk and they're all there. Let's get back to the callers. James is a first-time caller from Leeds. James, welcome.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Good evening. Very well, thank you. So what have they got to do to regain your trust, James?
Jeremy Corbyn's got my trust.
Okay.
Regarding anti-Semitism, they do have to get a grip of it because just showing... I don't listen to polls because, let's be honest, they're never right. They're far from right.
They can vary. And James, I do accept that, but I do think, and I want to repeat this point, there has been a downward trend in Corbyn's personal ratings and Labour's ratings since summer of last year.
When you look at the polling, yes, they have. But if you look at the members, they still have trust in him. And let's be honest, the MP, the backbenchers have tried getting rid of him, yet members, on time after time, in bigger numbers, are voting for him to stay.
Yes, that's true, James. That is absolutely true. But there is a difference, isn't there, between trying to replace the leader of your parliamentary party and actually resigning from the Labour Party, which 7 of them have done.
I'm going to be honest, half of the 7 are just boosting the ego. Tucker Moon, I don't know what he's doing. He's for the second referendum. That's all he's gone for.
Well, that may be.
I do understand why Luciana Berger and Mike Gapes has gone. And listening to Luciana Berger yesterday was, in my opinion, was heartbreaking listening to a story.
So what is wrong in your party, James? I mean, when you find things like vile anti-Semitism, a proper leadership of that party would have stamped it out. They haven't done it, James, have they?
They've tried to. And when you went to this, Jeremy Corbyn, he's got to get a grip of it. He's got to start listening now. I think he's starting to listen. I think he started to listen last year. But is it too late, James? Is the perception that they did not get on with this, they whitewashed it, the investigations lasted for months, nothing really happened? Is it a little bit too late under this leader to change that perception? No, I think Labour can still come back from this. I think he can perfectly come back from this, but you've got to get a grip of it.
All right, so if it gets a grip on the anti-Semitism and some of the thuggery that we've heard, I mean, Frank Field talked about this within his own branch, is that all it needs to do?
Yes, if he gets a grip on anti-Semitism,
all right.
It's because the Brexit side, in my opinion, Labour have got a clear plan on Brexit. You might not agree with it, yeah, but...
Well, James, do help me. What is Labour's position on Brexit? Do tell me.
Jeremy Corbyn got a lot of Theresa May 2 weeks ago. He set out perfectly Labour's position on Brexit. A permanent customs union, guarantees on workers' rights, and yet people still say Labour haven't got a plan. They have got a plan.
And yet, James, that's fine.
By the Prime Minister.
But on the same day, Keir Starmer was calling for a second referendum, and you can see why I'm confused, James, can't you?
Oh, that second referendum, if it was wrote in it and it's been taken out, then... Keir Starmer to undermine Jeremy Corbyn like that is a bit...
James, how did you vote? How did you vote in the referendum, James?
I voted to leave now.
You voted to leave?
I'll be honest. I still vote to leave now, but the second referendum it's a non-starter for me.
Well, OK, James, thank you. The trouble is, the second referendum is quite a big starter for a lot of current Labour Party MPs, and that is a fundamental split that is there within the party, and we've focused so much in the last couple of years on Tory splits, and we have on this programme talked about Labour splits, but boy, when you listen, to what Jack Straw is saying, that actually Jeremy Corbyn could be a threat to national security. I mean, it's horrifying. If you want to see it, lbc.co.uk. Chris says, if Tom Watson is Labour's best hope, then they really are finished. Baron says, the one thing we don't need is any more wishy-washy centre parties. Well, Baron, thing is, there's a suggestion here they could even be above the Liberal Democrats, Chucker's new mob, although they're not even a political party. But there we are. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it is 6:30 in time for the news with Lisa Aziz. Well, Labour Party problems apart, the other big news today is Honda, of course, confirming that it will close its Swindon plant in 2021 with a loss of 3,500 jobs. And Honda's Senior Vice President in Europe, Ian Howells, has repeated that the decision has nothing to do with the UK's departure from the European Union.
Brexit we've been very clear on in terms of what our expectations from Brexit were and what we'll be looking for from any deal. In terms of the actual impact on this decision, as I made very clear, it's not impacting this decision.
Brexit does not impact this decision, and he goes on to make it clear there's a massive change going on in the car market, not just the loss of confidence in diesel engines, which, remember, the government told us we should all buy, and now we shouldn't, but also they have decided, Honda, that they're going to move very swiftly, I quote, to the electrification of our vehicles because of the demand of our customers and legislation. So it's nothing to do with Brexit, and yet Andrew Adonis comes out and says the big news of the last 24 hours is not the Gang of Seven, it is Honda's decision in Swindon. The Japanese are now systematically withdrawing their 30 years of manufacturing because of Brexit. No, Andrew, it's not because of Brexit at all. In fact, ironically, it could be that the free trade deal that has been struck, Switzerland had one first, then the European Union, and we've said we wanted to have one. Ironically, if there's not a 10% import tax coming into this country, it does make it rather easier to make cars in Japan and do it. But the one that really gets me is Alistair Campbell of the People's Vote campaign. Alistair says, Honda, real business, real jobs, real damage, done by Brexit. Entirely predictable. The world is watching a country choose its own decline and its leaders fail to stop it. Alistair, the Senior Vice President in Europe has said it's nothing to do with Brexit. The bosses in Japan have said it's nothing to do with Brexit. You are not telling the truth, and you know it. Remember, you got into huge trouble over weapons of mass destruction. Don't do the same over Brexit. Start telling the truth, please. Right, let's get back to where we were. No, I tell you what we'll do. Before we get back to the callers, let's have some good news. Because I'm really, really sick to death and bored of this endless negativity that we get from the Remainers, that we're all about to fall off a cliff. It'll all be an economic disaster. Well, put this in your pipe and smoke it. Office of National Statistic figures today show 32.6 million people were in employment between October and December. We created hundreds of thousands of new jobs in this country last year. The jobless unemployment rate is the lowest it's been since early 1975, and even better, weekly average earnings rose last year by 3.6%. 8.4%. Wages are now rising above inflation, which after a decade of a terrible squeeze on wages is good news. Some good things are happening out there, but not good things within the Labour Party, who, according to a Snap poll released about an hour and a half ago, were down on 26%, having been 40% in June last year. I know it's a poll, I know it's a snapshot, but Jeremy Corbyn's own personal ratings have fallen month on month now for the last 8 months. Charlotte is calling from the Forest of Dean. Good evening, Charlotte.
Good evening, Nigel. Thank you for having me on the show.
Not one bit. So, Charlotte, are you a Labour supporter?
Well, I believe that the Labour Party had a problem anyway, because you've got the rampant Marxists and the Trots on the one side, and you've got the Blairite faction on the other side, and between the two of them, they're absolutely untenable and unworkable, and the party's unworkable as a whole, and to me, that makes them totally unelectable.
So the schism between the Social Democrats and the Socialists is just too great, yeah?
I think so, yeah. And not only that, the Marxist side, as we've seen recently, is extremely unattractive. I mean, I used to vote Labour donkeys years ago when Kinnock was the leader of the Labour Party. Uh-huh. And I got out because of Blair, because I just hated the sight of the man. And I feel that since Blair, the Labour Party's just gone to hell in a handcart. It doesn't represent the working man anymore. And it doesn't really represent any of the views that I would recognise in the Labour Party of years ago. What,
Charlotte, do they need to do to regain some trust?
I think basically it's got to be gutted from the inside.
Does that include the leader, Charlotte?
Yeah, the whole lot needs to be gutted and torched, politically speaking.
Right. Also, vivid imagery here from the Forest of Dean. And what sort of figure do you think could make Labour electable again? I mean, is it someone like Tom Watson?
Well, to be honest, I don't really think that much on Watson. I think you need somebody in there who basically take the party back to its roots, back to its working class roots, and recognise that ordinary working people, want to vote for people who have their best interest at heart, not a bunch of so-called Kensington, London bubble types that have never even
or
seen
Islington.
a factory in their life.
Islington's even more favourite. Charlotte, the fact you can't think of somebody immediately just shows me perhaps what problems they're in. Thank you for your call. And by the way, Tom Watson will be on air tomorrow on LBC from 10 to 12 a.m. I've no doubt he'll be bombarded by calls. Nigel, RE Honda, there's a bigger story here. When the EU agreed a free trade agreement with Japan, it knew it would lead to Japanese car makers moving production back home. The EU would have known this. Well, Gareth, we do all talk about free trade deals as being an unalloyed good, but you can, in a sense, understand why that is part of this decision, is they're going to leave the European space. But I do actually think it isn't just about that. Tariffs are just one factor. The fact is, Honda have decided electric cars are the way forward. That is their decision. They're going to do that back in Japan. Will is calling from Sheffield. Good evening, Will.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, what have Labour got to do? What steps, Will, have they got to take to get this right? Is it Corbyn? Is it Brexit? Is it anti-Semitism? What is it, Will?
Well, I think the steps that they've got to take, it's a long road for all of us. But I don't think it's got anything to do with anti-Semitism or Corbyn. With these MPs leaving, I think the fact is that they can see an opportunity, because it's possible that they've just decided to jump off a bridge, but I think they must be able to see some kind of opportunity, and I think that's because, there are so many disaffected people out there who don't vote because people are just sick to the back teeth of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. I think when you look at the record of the past couple of governments that we've had, and be honest about it, they've basically taken us to the brink of thermonuclear World War III. That's literally where we're at with it, and I think it started with Tony Blair and his insanity, and it's just gone further and further along.
Blair, we can say many things about. I'm not sure insane necessarily applies to Tony Blair. Maybe it does. So you basically, what you're really saying is that the whole of British politics is rotten and it all needs to be reshaped.
Well, I think basically I think it's this left-right paradigm that people are just completely sick of. If you look at, say, the Health Act, the Healthcare Act, it's completely structured for one system of public healthcare. It is not in any way structured to allow for any private healthcare. So it's completely biased in one direction, and it's this concept of it's either left or it's right, and no sense of and not even in the middle. Not a concept of the middle.
Do we need several political parties, Will, to choose from?
I think people just shouldn't vote for Labour or Conservative. They should just, and most people don't. That's why most people don't turn out to. That's why you get a lot of people who don't turn out to the elections, because if you look at the healthcare,
So is politics broken, Will? Is that connection between voters and the parties, has it gone?
It's not just the connection between the parties. Politics is broken. I think as a simple point, you can look at the Healthcare Act, and really we should have a public healthcare act and a private healthcare act. It's very simple. There's room for both. There's room for left and there's room for right.
Well, I sense your disenchantment with the whole show, and I do understand it. Thank you. And John on Facebook agrees totally with Will. He says both Labour and the Tories are now unelectable to me. Wow, we could be... Brexit, that referendum, the result of it was thought to be an earthquake. Maybe there's an even bigger earthquake coming in British politics. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz. Yep, you've got it. It's the theme music to The Great Escape, and it always brings a smile to people's faces, and they remember that film that was put out in the 1960s. And I played that because, just a little bit of history of this, 76 men got out of that tunnel. 3 of them got back to the United Kingdom. But of the rest, of the 73 that were captured, one of them, squadron leader Dick Churchill, whose death has been announced today at the age of 99, he is the last survivor of any of the 76 who actually got out beyond the wire on the night of the Great Escape. Of the 73 who were taken, they were all interrogated by the Gestapo. And one of the questions Squadron Leader Churchill was asked was whether he was a relation of the Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and he refused to answer that, even though he wasn't a relation, but he refused to answer it, giving his name, rank and serial number, and he wondered after that whether that was what had saved him, because of the 73 who were recaptured, 50 of them were executed, which led to subsequent war crimes trials after the war. We all know the story of The Great Escape. We know the music. We know the film. Well, the last person who got out beyond the wire that night has just died. Squadron leader Dick Churchill, aged 99. Now, some breaking news. ITV are reporting that the Islamic State schoolgirl, Shamima Begum, has had her British citizenship revoked. Her family have been told in a letter from the Home Office. I don't know exactly whether she had a passport from another country, because we've had repeated government ministers saying they wouldn't make anybody stateless, but she has been told she no longer has a British citizenship and she's not entitled to come back to this country, which I think is a good thing. More details on that, I've no doubt, will emerge over the coming hours, but that is the breaking news. Shamima Begum has had her British citizenship revoked. Wow. Elvis is a first-time caller from High Wycombe. Welcome, Elvis.
Hi there, Nigel.
Hello there. So tell me, are you a Labour Party supporter?
I am indeed. A good Labour supporter.
OK. Now, look, you would admit, I'm sure, that Labour has a real problem. 7 MPs breaking away. That's after Frank Field, of course, had done it just a few months ago. Jeremy Corbyn's personal ratings down and Labour's poll ratings down. Elvis, what has the party got to do to turn things round?
To be honest, I think Jeremy Corbyn needs to sit down with the Jewish leaders and talk over this and educate people about anti-Semitism and not only anti-Semitism but I think racism as a whole. Just to point out, Nigel, I think we are just concentrating just on the Labour Party. I think there's also anti-Semitism in the Conservative Party. I think it was the Conservative Party that supported the guy in Hungary, who's a bit the far-right leader, I believe.
Well, Elvis, let me just say this to you. I do think that if somebody in the Conservative Party made outright anti-Semitic abusive comments, I think the Conservative Party would expel them pretty quickly. And isn't the point here that there are some very extreme things that have been said within the Labour Party and they haven't dealt with it?
Yeah, that's why I said, Nigel, Jeremy Corbyn needs to sit and talk with, the Jewish leader, with the parties involved to understand, the situation. Because at the end of the day, all the Jews understand what is anti-Semitism. You wouldn't understand anti-Semitism like the Jews. Same thing, because I'm black. You won't understand, I'm racism against a black person than a black person.
All right.
It's simple. It's
All
about
right. So
it's about discussion. It's not about expelling people. It's educating people.
All right, so if Corbyn spends more time with Jewish leaders, all right, and is that all Labour needs to do? Or isn't the truth of it, Elvis, there's a massive split in the Labour Party between those who are social democrats like Chuka Umunna and those who are Marxists like John McDonnell. Isn't that the truth of it? There is a fundamental political split within this party.
I think there's a split in the country, Nigel, to be honest. The whole political situation is a mess. I think this is an opportunity for someone charismatic like you to maybe form another party that...
Well, Elvis, we'll see what happened. Rotten line Elvis was on, which was a shame. Thomas is a first-time caller from Kingston upon Thames. Good evening, Thomas.
Good evening, Mr. Farage.
Right, so I've sort of laid out what I think the problems are. What do you think could be done to restore faith in this party?
Well, me personally, I'm actually a fan of Mr. Tom Watson.
Okay.
I personally think he would have stamped out this vile behaviour within the party very, very quickly.
Uh-huh.
Not this, relaxed response that we've seen from Corbyn. And, moreover, I think he'd set things straight there. Emily Thornberry, the other one. I'm from London. I forget her name now, but he would have set them straight instantly. And Corbyn, I think he's been too relaxed. He's let things go, and we need someone to set things straight in there.
Right. So you got the wrong leader, basically.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Okay. So if Corbyn goes, someone like Watson takes over. You think it'll be back in the polls, and Chuka Umunna's breakaway with the other six will be just forgotten completely.
Well, I mean, I think they're forgotten already. To be honest, I think they're out. They're out straight away.
Well, they're going to struggle to get re-elected, Thomas. That is for sure. Okay, thank you for that. Now, a very strong riposte to Jack Straw's comments comes from Abby in Surrey. She says, are we really meant to take Straw seriously when he said that Corbyn is a threat to national security? Really? This is the same man who, together with Tony Blair, took us into an illegal war in Iraq, brought the wrath of extremism to this country. Abby, OK, I've given the counter-argument, but he's still a very senior Labour figure who said some very, very strong things about the leader, Jeremy Corbyn. Verrill is calling from Dagenham. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello, welcome. We've spoken before. So
sure, we've spoken before.
I know.
You're now a very good friend. You remember?
I do. Yeah, I love your calls. Now, Verrill.
You love my calls, right?
I do, because you're a star. One. Now, we've only got a minute for this one, Verrill. Right. So tell me.
What we got to do to get the Labour Party back on track, right?
Yeah.
Is get rid of Chuka Umunna for a start, because he's never anybody.
What he's got anyway.
No, he's just a load of crap. Yeah, just get rid of him.
Careful of the language. Yeah, right. Keep going.
All right. Well, he does a load of stupid things, and he could have been leading this party, and he blew it.
Okay, right. Well, forget Chuka. He's gone. But even with him gone, the Labour Party itself, without Chuka, has got problems, hasn't it?
No, it hasn't.
Oh, right.
The whole country's got problems.
Well, that's true.
Ever since I landed in this country in 1963, every English person I met hated Jews. Whether they were from right wing, left wing, there was no wings those days. They were just Labour Party and Conservative. And they all hated Jews.
That's a bit strong.
All I could hear was get rid of Jews, get rid of Jews. And suddenly they all blame it on the Labour Party.
Well, Verrill, I don't doubt there's anti-Semitism in all walks of life. I thank you for your call. But hey, the point really here is that when it occurred in the Labour Party, it wasn't dealt with through their disciplinary system. So, closing on, Islamic State schoolgirl Shamima Begum has had her British citizenship revoked. No doubt we'll find out more of that in a moment. I'll be back tomorrow at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. But with all the news, it's Ian Dale.
Well, you've just stolen my top line there, Nigel. Thanks for that.
That's all right.
We will be leading the news.